Nice to be with you all. My name is Lauren Marshall. I'm working on that. I got married a month ago, and I really love my last name of Davis. And so we're just working, we're working on that. But it's just nice to be with you all and to meet you if I haven't met you before. So I loved what Todd and Melissa shared the past 2 weeks. If you were here, Todd talked about how God sees us, how God is El Roy. And Melissa talked about how God's, despite the fact that we are scattered, that God's presence is with us, that he gives us a new heart, and that we can posture our hearts towards the Lord. And so as I was praying and kind of seeking the Lord as to what he wanted me to share, I feel like he kind of gave me a little bit of different, so just this talk will be a little bit different than like kind of a formal, like look at the Bible and, all these different things. I feel like the Lord, he extended an invitation. He extended an invitation to me, and he kind of wanted me to extend an invitation to you all. So I'm going to kind of talk about how the Lord has extended an invitation to my heart and how he does that for us all. And then also how kind of we have the privilege and the permission to extend our hearts towards others. And so, so if you need a title, I don't know if anyone takes notes. I'm a note taker, but I would say an invitational God. Okay, I'm going to pray and then we'll start. So Father, I just thank you so much for your grace, Lord, that your grace is sufficient. Father, I pray that you would speak through me, Lord. I am your vessel. This is for sure your talk, not mine. And so I just pray and ask that you would just meet us where we are, Lord, as we know that you will. So Lord, I lift this all up in Jesus' name. Prepare our hearts. Amen. Okay, so I would love to share a little bit about where I'm at coming in. So as I said, I got married 4 weeks ago to a wonderful, kind, patient, godly man named Ryan, who's on our team. It's been a kind of a crazy month. And so we moved into a new apartment in a new part of the city in Brighton. We live on the 3rd floor of a 3-family house, and there's a basketball court in the backyard, which I played basketball growing up. And so it's been really fun to play. And there's tons of kids in our neighborhood running around. And we just got a Vitamix for our wedding, and so I've been making like oat flour and banana oat muffins, and we made this awesome like sweet potato curry dish. And so there's been a lot of really sweet things that have happened in this season. But then there's also a lot of loss, right? Of like, I lived with 2 girls last year that I loved dearly, and both of them have moved. So one of them moved to New York City, and one of them moved to Orlando, Florida. And so I just miss them. I miss doing life with them. I miss the daily things. And then the big things of when I'm crying and my friend Jessie will sit with me and play with my hair. Like just those things that, you miss. And then, I also moved to a new team. So I graduated from Bentley in 2019 and an intern there for a year. And now I'm on the Fenway team, which I'm super excited about. But there's change there, right? There's a new transition, new dynamic, and missing old staff and meeting new people. And so I just I'm sharing all of those things. Yes, I guess to get to know you more, but so you can get to know me more. But really, because I want you to know that no matter where you are coming in, whether you're like super happy and super excited about college, or you're kind of nervous, or whether you're a freshman or a senior, or you're at home, and maybe some of your friends went off to college, or your siblings, and so maybe you're missing them, or you're in a new place with a new person who has different quirks than that you knew, or really wherever you are. I just want to, just know that you're welcome, that we are happy that you're here, that we see you, that the Lord sees you, that you are loved and valued, and that you are free to come to this space, no matter how you are, whether you are, no matter how you're doing emotionally, wherever you are physically. As Melissa said, we're kind of all scattered around, but that you are welcome, and that the Lord extends this invitation to us. And I just feel like that's his heart, that as I was praying, I went on a prayer walk today and just felt like he was just wanting me to invite you all to know that you're welcome. And I'm happy you're here, and we're all happy that you're here. So that's kind of, and I also wanted to say that no matter where you are in your spiritual walk, you are welcome here, and this is a space for you. So whether you've read your Bible cover to cover and you read it every day, or you've never even opened this book called the Bible, you are welcome here, no matter where you are, and we want to be a space for that. So that's kind of, I just wanted to share, and so I'm gonna, if it's okay, I'm gonna share a little bit about how the Lord has extended his hot arm and his hand to me. throughout my life. And so growing up, I grew up in Connecticut. I'm the oldest of three girls, two-parent household. And I was raised Catholic, but really what that means is that we go to church on Sundays, we get pancakes after, and we don't talk about God at all. So that's kind of what my upbringing was. And as I've been reflecting a little bit more, I think so what developed for me was this like kind of rule follower, check the box type of like, okay, I go to church, check. And I thought this was the only hour a week I could connect with God. But even more so as my parents, they love me dearly. And my mom and my dad, like they love me and they care for me. But I think what kind of developed in me was this, okay, as a kid, if I did the wrong things, I got yelled at. And if I did the right things, I didn't get yelled at. And so it was kind of like this, what developed was this performance mentality of like, okay, if I clean up after myself, and if I do well in school, and if I do well in sports, and if I check all these things and do all these things and am a nice person, then I'm not going to get yelled at. But then if I don't obey or if I don't do the right things, then I'm going to get yelled at, and that's bad. And so I think what happened was it just developed this performance mentality in my life, but also my relationship with the Lord. Because as my parents, like that's how I viewed the Lord. So that was happening. And then in middle school, high school, even college a little bit, but I was bullied as a kid, ganged up on by 7 girls. I ganged up on by like a few girls in high school, and kind of was walking on eggshells a lot and felt rejected by a lot of friends, but then like had some good friends. And so there's just kind of this rocky relationships that I think I just experienced. But I've always loved people. Like even as a kid, my mom said people were my favorite toys. And so if I played with a toy for more than like 5 seconds, my parents would buy it because they were just like, oh, maybe she'll give us a break. Like I was the kid at the table who was like, Mommy, you draw. Like I want to watch you draw. And even now, like my favorite hobby is going on a walk and talking with a friend for like an hour and a half. So that's kind of like my upbringing. And so then when I came to college, I was still my rule follower, check the box type. My parents stopped going to church in 8th grade, but I kept going. And so then when I went to college, got involved with club rugby, and I started partying, but I never really liked it. I just kind of went because that's what my friends were doing. But they were the kind of friends where I just never felt like super accepted. I never felt super loved. I just went along to get along. And I kind of realized, like, I don't know, that I think that I'd rather have no friends than friends that made me feel like that. And so my sophomore year, got involved with other people, but I got invited. I went on this Habitat for Humanity spring break trip, and this guy James Newman, who was on the trip, I wouldn't have known him otherwise. And we were studying in this like student center space one Saturday night, and I remember somehow we got talking about faith, and he told me about this Athletes in Action like Bible study that was informally led by the football team on Thursday nights, and I was like, cool, I'll go. Like I would never talk to these people otherwise. Like that's just not, I would never interact with and I was like, this is cool, I'll share it. And so I went and I loved it. Like they talked about God in a way that I had never heard before. I've never heard like the way that they prayed, and the way they actually owned a Bible. I was like, this is amazing. They actually read it. It was just like, I never experienced it before. And so I went my sophomore year, my junior year. And when I went, I'm telling you, I'm a loose cannon. Like I would just share about my life. I never talked about the Bible or anything. But what was amazing was that I belonged. Like I was a part of the group. And so I went my sophomore and my junior year, and then my junior, I went on a spring break trip, and one of the girls on the trip told me to my face that she thought that I was ditzy and stupid and fake. And I'm a lot of things, but like those things I'm not. And so I think it was the first time that I experienced like a rejection so blatantly. Like all the other like times of feeling rejection, it was more subtle or more behind my back, but it was just like this blatant, like, this is who you are. And it was just, I felt really misunderstood. And so I came back and was feeling really low. And that Sunday, I invited myself to go to church. I had never been to non-denominational church before, and everyone in my Bible study went to it, but I didn't. And so I walked in, it's a gymnasium, there's a band, there's a stage. I'm like, what is this? And the first sermon I ever heard, it was as if the Lord saw me, and everything I had been talking about that prior Thursday, he just repeated back to me. And so I was like, clearly, Lord, you're listening to me. And so then the next Thursday, I went back to Athletes in Action to talk about the parable of the prodigal son, which I'll talk about in a little bit. And then I was so proud of myself. I'm like, this reminds me of the parable of the lost sheep, because I don't read the Bible. This is like the only Bible contribution I've ever given. And if you don't know the parable of the lost sheep, there's 100 sheep. One goes missing. The shepherd will leave the 99 to go after the one. And so I went back to church and I played this song, Reckless Love, where it says, there's a line that says, he leaves the 99. I'm bawling. I'm like, oh my goodness, like I'm the one. God's coming after me. And so God was pursuing me March 2018. And then that April, I had a conversation with a friend, and she was just saying at the end of it, she's like, Lauren, we're really similar. And I was like, oh, that's cool. She's like, yeah, but you're happy. And I'm like, yeah, I'm happy. Like, I've always been a happy kid. She says, do you think it's because you're religious? I'm like, I'm not religious. I'm faithful. And so I shared a little bit about my story and kind of how God was pursuing me, and it helped her. I don't know, inspired her, made her feel better. And so I went back to my room and I cried for an hour and a half because I was just so touched that my story could help her. And I was like, I think I need to go on a summer mission. Now this is April. All the deadlines are in February. I don't even know what a summer mission is. And so I went and talked to my Cru staff, and he's like, well, it's a little late in the game. You have a few options, but one of them was to go to Yellowstone National Park. And the reason why I can go there for 11 weeks was because there's 12 boys, 12 girls, and a girl dropped. And so I wrote the application 3 hours, sent it in. Another girl applied ahead of me, so I wasn't going to be able to go. And then another girl dropped. And so I was just like, okay, like, Lord, like, you want me to go? And I thought I was going to go hiking, work in housekeeping, do a little bit of faith stuff, but really just like be in Yellowstone. And so I had another thing coming to me. So I show up, and it's like all these Christians that like love the Lord, and we're learning about him. And I'm like, I don't like this. I don't like that. I don't like that. Like, I'm like, I'm a little bit firecracker. And so, we're having these women's times, and I'm like, why are there women's times? Like, why can't we be with the boys? Like, why can't we all be together? And they had explained to me that, sometimes people don't want to share things that, and so, anyways, I learned, and I heard the gospel clearly for the first time in my life. I heard that God loved me, but Albany said this in our breakout, but sometimes we think of God as like this out there, he loves me, big God. But I never heard that he loved me personally, and that he created me and had a good plan for my life, but that I'm sinful. Like, I honestly don't think I've really understood it until then, where it's like, well, you can't just add enough sugar. You can't just add enough good things in order to like make up for the way that you are broken. And even yesterday, like, I snapped at Ryan, and it's like, that's like, even one sin separates us from God. And so it's like, okay, and because of that, like, I deserve death. I deserve to be separated from God forever. But that's not the end of the story. It's pretty grim. It's not the end of the story, but Jesus came, right? Died a death, took on like everyone's sins, but specifically he took on my sins. He lived a sinless life, so he didn't deserve it, but he died to restore relationship. That if I put my faith in Jesus, and it's like, if I put my faith in Jesus and I'm trusting him to pay the price for my sins rather than myself, then I can experience eternal life, and that he wanted a relationship with me. Like, I had never heard that God isn't a relational God. So heard the gospel. 2 weeks in, I surrendered and just learned a lot. I grew. I walked with the Lord. I walked in community. And so I share all that. And that's kind of like the story of how God grabbed a hold of my heart. But how does that apply to everyone else? And so there's the story of the prodigal son, and I heard and I referenced. And so it's in Luke 15. The story, if you don't know, it's a father who has a younger son and an elder son. And the younger son, he comes up to his dad and he says, Dad, like, I wish you were dead. Can I have my money as if you died? And the father, most fathers back then would have been like, go away. Like, my land is my wealth. Like, my land is my status. But this father is compassionate. And so he breaks his heart, but he sells off his land and he gives it to the son. And the son goes off and tries to find satisfaction in worldly things. He does wild living, which I don't know what that means, but maybe like, prostitutes, partying, gambling, like all these things. And he wastes all of his money on these like short-term temporary pleasures. And then he runs out of money and there's a famine. And so And so he hires himself out to be a pig feeder, which was like the lowest of the low in those days. And so he kind of comes to his senses, and he's like, okay, like even my father's servants have 3 meals a day. Like I'm going to come back. And he creates this plan. Like I'm going to come back. I'm going to say I'm sorry. And I'm just going to ask to be a hired man. And he comes back, and he says, so I'll read a little bit, but it says, when he was still a long way off, his father saw him and felt compassion and ran and embraced him and kissed him. And the son said to him, Father, I've sinned against heaven and before you. I'm no longer worthy to call your son. But the father said to his servants, bring quickly the best robe and put it on him, and put a ring on his hand and shoes on his feet, and bring the fattened calf and kill it, and let us eat and celebrate. For this is my son who is dead and is alive again, and is lost and is found. They began to celebrate. When I first heard this, I was like, oh my gosh, like I'm the younger son. Like if I take one step towards God, he runs to me and he loves me and he hugs me. And that's beautiful, right? It's a story of reconciliation, like how we are broken with the Lord and we go our own way, but because of his compassion, when we come back, like he welcomes us with open arms. It's beautiful. I am for sure the elder son type. And so the elder son is, and we have both in us, but the elder son, he's off in the field working. And now as I've walked with Jesus more, I've kind of realized like he's out working and he comes back and he's like, what's going on? And, and the servant comes over and he's like, oh, like your brother returned. We're having a big party. And he becomes angry. It says, but he was angry and refused to go in. His father came out and entreated him. So the father comes out of the party to plead with his son. He's having the best day of his life. His son just returned, right? And he's coming back out to meet with his older son, who won't come in, which would be very rude, I think, even now, right? If one of you is having a party and your sister's having a party, you don't go in, like that's a little, and he says, like, look, these many years I've served you and I've disobeyed your command, yet you have never gave me a young goat that I might celebrate with my friends. And so even in that, it's like he did all these good works, but what do he want? He's no different than the younger son. It looks different. It's more hidden. It's more secret. It's more internal. The younger son was like blatantly, Dad, I want your dad. I want your stuff. Can I go? But the older son, she did all the right things, and he was there. And even though he was present with the father, like he wasn't actually like relationally close. He didn't understand that while he was out in the field, he didn't know the father's heart. Like he didn't know like his joy that he was feeling when his son came back. And his other son came back, and then the father says, son, you're always with me. All that is mine is yours. And it was fitting that we celebrate and be glad, for this your brother was dead and is alive. He was lost and is found. And so I share that because I think the older brother was lost too, even though he was there and he did all the right things and checked all the boxes and did all these things. He still didn't have the father. And so I think, I just want to encourage you. And I feel like the Lord really prompted me today that like, there's an open invitation from the Lord. He extends his hand, whether you're more like a younger son or whether you're more like an elder son, whether you do all the right things and check all the boxes, and maybe you've been raised going to church your whole life, or raised, in a Christian home, but you've never made the decision for yourself, or vice versa, or you've kind of never really been interested in faith, or kind of have gone away, or, found satisfaction in other things that actually leave you empty or leave you hungry. Like Jesus offers his hand to us, and he doesn't. One thing I want to say is that it's not about behavior modification. Like this is not about us just being good and doing the right things and being like, okay, yep, Jesus, you're great, and I'm just going to read my Bible every day and do all these things. It's like, it's not like we receive Jesus and then we just pull ourselves up by the bootstraps and we just kind of like to do that. But to kind of do the Christian thing. But this is about like a relationship. This is about us being transformed by him and becoming more in his image, but because we're in relationship with him. But it's also like, if we sin and we mess up, we're also not called to fall into shame and self-pity. Like I'm totally guilty of that, where like I do something wrong and I just want to hide because like, I feel like my identity oftentimes is in me being good enough or me doing these things, and then I fail and then I fall into this pit. And so the Lord extends his invitation to us. And so I just want to share that his hand is extended, and we have the privilege to extend our hand to others, also like his hand through us. And so my story, I mean, the Lord used James Newman. He used even the people who have treated me poorly, he used them to bring me closer to the Lord. He used my friend Taylor in that conversation that got me to go to Yellowstone. He used Andrew, who invited me to go to Yellowstone. He used my roommate Leah, who would listen to me complain about this summer mission for the first 2 weeks. He used all these people to bring me to himself. And so I just want to encourage us all to be invitational. Like the Lord is invitational with us. And so just to be invitational with your suite mates and with your roommates and with the people that you meet in your classes, to do fun things, but also to be invitational with the Lord. Like he offers his hand to us, but he's a gentleman. He's not going to break down the door. He's not going to pull your hand. But yeah, that he, like, go on a prayer walk with him and invite him in to kind of what you're going through. This came, and he didn't take away all of the brokenness. We clearly see it throughout the world. And yet he came to enter in. And so, and then also just one last encouragement is to be invitational with people who maybe don't know Jesus, or maybe people who like you think would never come to a Fall Cru. Like you never know, like when the Lord, my friend James, like he probably didn't expect me to come, but I came, right? And so there's just this sense of you don't know where the Lord's working, and so we actually get to participate in his work for others. And so that's kind of my my call. I wrote one thing down. Our God. Okay, so our God is an invitational God, and he extends a constant invitation to us. So it's not a one-time thing, right? A constant invitation to us, and we have the privilege to extend the invitation to others. So thanks so much, and I'll turn it back to the MCs.